I am Maas. I am a full-time audio engineer, studio owner. I've been at this now for about 15 years. I've made records all over the world. I've recorded bands who've come here or to whatever studio I own at the time. A lot of stuff's hit the billboards. I played in a lot of bands over the years. I started a band called Defeater in 2007, 2008. And I toured pretty extensively for 8 years. We signed to Bridge 9 Records to start, and then we ended up signing to Epitaph Records. And then since, I've sort of just become a full-time engineer and producer and also a full-time dad. So that's who I am. I got started recording in, I think it was early 2004. I got a tax return from my job at the time. I was sort of in between figuring out like, all right, I'd been in the studio before. I kind of had like this new band, and I wasn't exactly sure if what I wanted to do was like spend all this money on this new band that I didn't even know, like if we're gonna play shows or what we're gonna do. But I definitely did want to record it. So I did the math and I went to Guitar Center. I was probably like a little bit overconfident, but I just bought a bunch of stuff and I was like, I can do this. I've seen people do this. Like, how hard could it be? I mean, obviously it turns out there was a lot more to it than I originally anticipated. But yeah, like it was January 2004. Like I did my taxes right away, and then I took that little tax return and went to Guitar Center and decided like, this should be easy. So that's kind of how I got started. If I could start all over again with the knowledge that I've obtained since, I definitely would have done a lot of things differently. One thing that happens is like when you're first starting out, you're going to start encountering all these new problems. You know, why don't my guitar sound like this? And why don't my vocals sound like this record? Or whatever it is. Sometimes you think that you need to spend a lot more money to fix those problems than you do. And actually, as I age into my career, I find myself needing to do like a lot less stuff, and I do things a lot quicker now. I think one of the first things I would have done is told myself to not buy new gear to fix every problem, because the most important piece of gear is what's between your ears. So the problem is at the time, you haven't exactly developed that yet, so you go to your wallet. But yeah, I bought countless things that I thought would fix certain problems, only to find while they had uses and they were cool pieces of gear, or sometimes they weren't and I'd have to sell them because it was a mistake, it rarely fixed my problem. It did give me experience with new gear and stuff, which is cool. But yeah, I probably would have told myself to save like a bunch of money. I think the most important part of any song kind of varies based on the composition of that song and stylistically too. And if we're talking like westernized pop music, and so often we're talking about like chorus, like the chorus has to bang. I think that would be the obvious answer for a lot of people in terms of like parts of song. Maybe the sort of slightly changed perspective here. Like the most important part of my role in the song to me is to be able to effectively sort of be a vessel for what the artist has in their head and get it to come out of the speakers. And I think it can be like an emotionally tricky position too, right? Because you're dealing with people who hopefully have anyway, like a really strong vision for what they're trying to create. And so if I'm dealing with a band with pop sensibilities, we're probably gonna spend a lot of time on the choruses and we're gonna make sure they're perfect. But if I'm dealing with an instrumental band or just something different, in those cases, the goal of the composition could be different. I think the most important part of a song really varies, but I think identifying what's important to the band is the real challenge, and what's really important. It would be really hard for me to pick a favorite record I've ever done, particularly since I've done so many, and I've done so many across like such a diverse range of styles of bands. So favorite record I'm working on right now might be the new Somos record. It's really cool. I'm really proud of them for challenging themselves. I think a common thread that I could find in projects that I really like is the bands aren't worried about, does this fit a specific genre? It's not pop punk, doesn't have to be metal specifically, or like follow like the hard guidelines of hardcore or anything like that. It's a band making music and making it for themselves. And when we're in the control room together and everybody's getting really, really excited about this thing we're doing, you can feel it, especially if I'm resonating with the artist too. We can really feel us making something cool and creative, and never once are we worried about what are kids gonna think? What's popular right now? That to me feels exceptionally uninspired. So every record that I've done that I've really loved, I think has definitely had that in common. We're just making it just to make it, just to make something cool. And if it does something cool, awesome. But what I found is that when we don't care about what's gonna happen, more often than not, good things do happen. two bands that I would love to work with that I've not been able to work with yet, nor do I ever think I'll get to work with. It's totally just fanboy stuff, but two of my favorite bands are Fugazi and Jawbreaker. If no other reason than how much those bands and the records that they made really meant to me as a kid growing up skateboarding, as like someone who dealt with their angsty youth, who's someone who moved a lot. It was good. I think from Fugazi, while the lyrics are cool, it's the instrumental and the experimentation aspects of Fugazi that I really like, and it feels really performance-based. It feels really honest. I love that a lot. Jawbreaker is definitely a lot more refined in traditional structure sense. Chords are not as complex. The compositions are not as complex. However, there is a certain charm and wit that I find exceptionally endearing. The wordplay is great. Neither bands necessarily have outstanding vocalists from like a traditional sense, but they both have outstanding vocalists in the sense that they're unique and compelling. So I'm not as worried if there's a little flat or a little sharp or whatever. It's really like the passion and delivery that does it, and what they're trying to say and how intelligently they're trying to say it. So those would probably be the two projects I would love to do and know that I probably never get to do. But if you're out there, let's do it. In this day and age, who isn't a big plugin user, A lot of us have ones that we've really gotten to know and we use all the time. That newish plugin Soothe, the moment that came out, I was just head over heels. I could find uses for that all over the place. It's such a smart plugin. How was this not already a thing? It's so useful. I'll use plugins for character when it comes to effects, so like delay, reverbs, modulation, that type of stuff. We use plugins for character, but I think I don't use them for like warmth and distortion and that type of stuff very much, but I use them a lot to fix problems, like FabFilter Pro Q3, incredible. Like how good is that on guitars, right? You've got like that peak around like 2.2K, or at least I always seem to get one. And now I can go in, I can find exactly where it is. I can like make that nice narrow notch I want to make and pull it down, based on the guitar tone, just enough so like that whistle goes away. If you didn't know it was there, you might not necessarily know what was going on, but there would just be something fatiguing and irritating about the guitars as you listen to them more and more. Once you figure out what it is, once you take it out, like all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, how did I ever not hear that right away? And the other thing I'll do on guitars with Pro Q3 is they have these new dynamic EQs. So I'll just put it like usually where when you're doing like open chords, you got a certain amount of low end response, but if it's a heavier band and they like start like chugging or whatever, you're going to get this low end build up somewhere around 100 hertz. It depends on the tuning and all this stuff and how far away like the proximity effect is, the microphone to the speaker, if you're using a real amp. I do that because I'm old. I'll use Pro Q3 there. And so only when those chugs come in, I'll have it just start like hammering just that frequency range down so it doesn't overwhelm the mix, especially as you start stacking guitars. And a lot of times like the low end of the bass guitar can kind of live there. You can get a ton of build up there if you're not careful, and it can really hurt your mixes. So that's it. I got Pro Q3, I got Soothe, I love. Oh, that Greg Wells Mixcentric is black magic. It's one knob, it just like makes things sound better. It's annoying. What plugins did I grow up on? Because when I moved to 64-bit, my plugin game flipped. I had plugins from like 07 they stopped making that I loved. And then Cubase was like, all right, psych, like no more 32-bit anything. Yeah, that makes sense. It's time. Warp. There was a Steinberg plugin called Warp. It's supposed to be like some sort of bass cabinet emulator. It was the weirdest thing ever, and it had the most drastic scoop. Crazy. My assistant turned me on to it, and we used it on bass nonstop, and like nobody's using that plugin, and now I'm not using it either. And we found ways around it. It's like not a problem. This is a great question. This is gonna sound like a cop-out, but I can't get my sound without my brain. Having recorded for as long as I've recorded, and having recorded in as many different studios, on as many different DAWs, consoles, rooms, like different microphone selection, all of that stuff, what I find is that my preferences and opinions and artistically like my taste seems to really guide me. So I use gear, be it a 57, a Royer 121, E22S, or it's a Distressor 1176, whatever it is. I use that stuff to help get me to the place that I hear in my head. Once you spend enough time with the gear, you start using what you feel like its strong suits are. So there's times where my mic choice, or a lot of times where my mic choice, or even compressor choice really has to do with what's my source sound like, what is this band like? What destination do I have in my mind? I'll just choose whatever I need to help me get there. I think as you age into recording, great compressors are amazing, but I think it's proven that you can make a really compelling piece of audio, like with a handful of 57s, you know what I mean, in a 4-track. Like if you have enough experience doing that, we've seen that through the ages. Good sounding records don't sound any particular way. So again, this is a testament to nothing is more important than trusting in yourself and educating yourself with experience, like as much as possible. How much time do we have? Jerry Finn, Mark Trombino, love them. I have to give my hat off to Kurt Ballou. He gave me an opportunity just to like help intern and stuff with him, and I learned a lot from Kurt, and I think that he does something really cool and special and unique. His sonic signature might be challenging for some at times, but I think it's really smart and I love it. You know, Will Yip's really popular and I think it's totally deserved. I can always hear a Kurt Ballou record. Like I hear 2 seconds of a record and I'll know it's Will Yip. I really like the way his records sound. So when you carry, don't set your level of enjoyment based on a certain level of expectations. Understand that learning takes time, and that if you really like to record and you really like to participate in music and helping people create art, you need to be passionate about the craft itself. If you're even thinking business plan before you're thinking like you just can't wait to get to the studio and be, you know, creatively compelled, then I think your tenure in this industry might be shorter. Some of us have made a living out of doing this for sure. The reason you'll stick around is because you really love it. And the fact that you really love it will help you make great work when we're not stressed on what other people are going to think or like what's going to happen, but we're doing it because we just purely love to do it. That just always seems to lead to good results. Just go for it, try stuff, throw away the concept of rules. I know like new engineers are always looking for, on snare drum, you cut this frequency and then you boost this frequency and you use this compressor. And that sucks. That's not true. You can do anything you want. And I encourage you to try a lot of different stuff. You gain a wider array of experiences, and then you can draw from those experiences when you encounter new situations where they may apply. There's some advice for you, kiddos. Podcasts, books on tape. Wow, I'm old. I'm listening to Tame Impala again. Super listen to Currents front to back a million times, then sort of forgot about it. Now I'm listening to that record all over again. Another band I've been listening to a lot is Oathbreaker, female fronted, sort of like grindy hardcore from Belgium, mid 90s, almost goofy, like Will Smith summertime type of hip hop in the car. Also, I have a son now. We kind of like keep it lighter. You have to understand, I spend almost all of my time down here listening to cymbals and guitars. So when I get into the car, sometimes I just don't want to hear anything abrasive whatsoever because my entire day was like fucking pick slides and squeals and shit. So, and I'm old, like, you know, I fucking listen to the news. And Fugazi. Still